Chapter 9. Ants. A young elven girl of 7 years old rubbed mud-covered hands along already dirtied pants, marveling at her work. She had dug a line of water from the flowing river within the town of Behar over to a large colony of ants. Her eyes followed the flow of it, slowly but surely inching ever closer to the insects, crawling in and out of their home none the wiser. The girl's feet slowly crept along the same pace until the water finally reached the anthill. She watched as the water overflowed, soaking the mound of earth and all the bugs within. Their bodies floated along, getting swept away by the current, unable to cling to any solid ground. The child watched, and she began to feel an unease within her chest that she did not have the knowledge to name. The whispers within her mind took up all her inner thoughts anyway, melting the unease into something more familiar. "Look how they drown," the voices said, cooing in tones akin to metal scraping against metal. "Insignificant. The world turns still. Unneeded, are they?" The girl supposed that was true. She still lived even as they died, even as the water soaked through her shoes, the same water that suffocated them. Still, something her mother had told her nagged at her mind. "We take life only when we need to," she explained. "The birds that fly and the deer that bound draw breath just the same as we do. We take from them what we need and honor their sacrifice." "What about people, Mama?" the girl had asked. Her mother had paled, eyes widening. She cleared her expression before her daughter could sense anything amiss, coughing to clear her throat. "That is not quite the same, love. We would never hurt someone unless our life was truly in danger. Do you understand?" The girl thought she did, but the voices began whispering so sweetly, so surely, that she doubted her mother's words. "Kind," they said, "until she knows. She will know, and where will you be?" The thought etched a great fear into the child's heart. Before the girl could respond, her father had walked into the house, hefting a lamb over his shoulder. With a large smile, he used one calloused hand to pat the child's head, beaming down at her. When he withdrew, he leaned over to kiss his wife, presenting the animal. Her mother rose from her seat as she rolled up her sleeves. "Outside with you," she said playfully to her daughter, tickling her sides and eliciting a giggle from the child. "Dinner must be prepared. I will come get you when it is time." The girl nodded vigorously, though when she stole a glance at the lamb, a strange feeling welled in her chest. Her young mind did not dwell on it as her father handed her a large wooden spoon, his tanned and weathered face never losing its grin. "Go dig something up from the riverside." He winked, knowing that she would inevitably get filthy, which caused her mother to groan in protest. The girl smiled back, gripping the spoon in both hands and rushing over to the door as her father held it open for her. "Valyn," her mother called. She stopped, turning to glance at her as the sun cast a warm glow inside the house. "A savakit," her mother said. "Do you remember what it means?" Valyn racked her brain, her small voice letting out a long in thought. Finally, she shook her head, tangled hair swaying at her shoulders. Her mother laughed and replied, "It means I love you. Go have fun, my sweet." Now, watching the last of the ants wash away, the child had nothing so lovely on her mind, only the feeling from the voices that she had a word for. Hunger. Once she thought of the word, it was as if the flow of the entire river had burst into her chest, unrelenting and overwhelming. She began to hyperventilate, the air only choking her more, and her small hands clutched at her chest. She could not scream. She could only fall to her knees in the pool of water, lifeless insect bodies crushed under their weight. Even as she heard her father's voice from the door of her home, she could not utter a sound besides rasping breaths. She felt his strong arms lift her to his chest, rushing her to her panicking mother. Their concerns did nothing but cause the hunger to grow. "More," the whispers urged. She could not remember when they had gotten so strong. She thought of the ants and wondered why she had killed them in the first place. Without realizing it, her breathing became even, deep, and steady. Her eyes stared unblinking at the ceiling from where she lay in her bed, the face of her mother out of focus even though she was so close. She was crying, too, and Valyn could not hear her. All she heard were the voices urging more, 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 so loud her ears began to ring. "Ants," she whispered, unable to hear even her own voice. "I'm sorry." The repeating word was all she heard. It had to stop. She had to make it stop. "What do you want?" she thought desperately. "It is what you want," they replied. "You're hungry, so hungry, you starve, and all the bugs will never be enough." "What would be enough?" she asked, and the echoes of more began again, louder, faster. She felt tears running down the sides of her face, and the touch of her mother's loving hands wiping them away only made them flow all the more. Valyn turned her head to glance at her mother's face, and the hand that had been so gentle pulled away in an instant. Confusion clouded the child's face, for what she saw in her mother was so foreign to her. She did not know what it was, did not have the right word. The voices obliged. "Terror," they said. "See? We do not lie. We knew it, we knew it, we knew it." The sounds around the child became clearer, as if the whispers had quieted themselves to make sure she heard. "What is it?" her father asked, grasping at her mother's shoulders. Though when his eyes rested upon Valyn, that same expression painted his features. "Her eyes," whispered her mother in response. The child felt a great heat spreading over her body, and a shimmering gold enveloped her. "No," her mother murmured. "No, we have to calm her. How do we calm her?" Valyn's father knit his brows and seemed to make a decision. He reached a hand down to touch her shoulder, and the moment he did, his skin began to burn. He yanked his hand away, and the terror set in his eyes once more. The husband and wife took a step away from their child, and that was when the threads snapped. Valyn remembered only fleeting moments, like the way her body moved seemingly without her controlling it. The house had gone up in flames so quickly, just like the rest that followed. The smell of burnt flesh seemed to soak into her clothes. The only thing keeping her from retching was the constant flow of words from her lips, a repeated phrase that could not be heard by any of the dying. "I'm sorry," she cried over and over. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." All the while, even as sick as the sights and smells made her, the hunger that had been growing in her body was fading, and the magic rejoiced. "They burn," the voices cheered. "They burn, and you yet live. We feast now. We will feast always. You will feast forever." The child did not want to. Hadn't her mother told her this was wrong? But her hunger pained her so, and it was bliss to satiate it. She had never felt stronger. That is, until the golden magic around her carried her, floating, back to her burning home. Her mother was silent upon the ground, blackened just the same as the walls of their home. Valyn's father was still breathing, weakly, half his body smoldering and melted. That is when Valyn did retch hard enough to expel what little she had in her stomach. But once she was done, the magic dragged her to him regardless. She tried to close her eyes and found that she couldn't. The magic wanted her to look upon him, chest racked with coughs, and his once sure hands shaking. With his one intact eye, her father focused on her, and she could not tell what sort of look was on his face, for only half remained. Even in the state he was in, his unburned hand feebly reached to his thigh, where his dagger rested. Valyn knelt beside him, her voice hoarse as she uttered, "I'm sorry." Her father pressed the dagger into her hands, wrapping her frail fingers around the handle. He could not speak, but up close, Valyn could see his single eye well with tears before it became unfocused, staring up at her. The child took the dagger and stood to watch the rest of the village going up in pillars of smoke in the sky. She cried heavy tears that flowed in a constant stream until the morning sun rose with the new day. She cried and cried, trying to remember even as her cries broke into laughter, only for tears to overtake her again and again. Her father had told her about fire, and her mother had told her about life. Those words she remembered clearly. But there was another, a word from their language that her mother had reminded her of just before she left the house to play. What had it been, and what had it meant? It felt important, and in the charred remains of what little was left of Behar, it was the only thought that kept her from true insanity. Valyn awoke to a knock at her door, the sound startling her out of bed. She blinked rapidly, her body soaked in sweat from the nightmare she'd had. Nightmares about her hometown had never been so vivid, not until now, and she wondered why. As she pondered, another knock sounded, and she jumped again. She cursed, running her hands through her hair to push it back while making her way to the door. There was only one person it could be, and she was equally consumed by both dread and happiness. There stood Asta, bathed in noonday sun, just how Valyn liked her. Though she liked Asta in any light, she thought. She wanted to smile, but the look on the girl's face was ashen, with the most serious expression she had ever seen her wear. Nervousness gripped Valyn's heart like a vice, but she did not show it. Asta looked up at her with those lovely moonstone eyes, and Valyn was stuck in place. "Come," she said. "I have something I must confess."